Welcome back to another episode of the Daily Turnup. Thank you so much for joining in. We are doing an episode out of order because what is happening in the Middle East is, I don't want to say unprecedented because Israel and Iran like to beat each other up, but definitely out of the norm. And with everything going on in the world in 2025, it's just another level of insanity. And so we got a regular, which is CK. Honestly, CK is part of the show. He's not even a regular. He is just the show. But we do have a special guest. G, do you want to say a quick hi?
Hey, everybody. MR, CK, great to be back. Thanks for having me again. Really interesting time to be alive, seeing what's going on in the world today.
You aren't kidding. CK, how you feeling?
Feeling great. Every day is unprecedented in 2025. Just want to start by saying Happy Father's Day to all the listeners who are dads.
Man, I like that. I was thinking, we always use the word unprecedented because it really is. We need to make a bingo card. We have talked about it. We need a bingo card because who would have had this on their bingo card? This probably would have been a high one. All right, so I think there's three major topics we want to talk about today. We're going to lead with Israel-Iran because we want to avoid World War III at all costs. Then we'll jump into No King's Day and Trump's military parade, and we're going to end with the assassination out in Minnesota. So quick recap with Israel and Iran is we were talking about this before the podcast, trying to figure out, like, okay, what's the story here? Who's winning the war? Who's bombing what? Like, what is actually going on? And I think that is the theme of this entire thing, is the misinformation by both Israel and Iran, the propaganda by both sides where they're saying, we destroyed more facilities, we took out the nukes, we're shooting down Israel's aircraft. And so I think that's the lead story here, is that wherever you get your information, it's probably close to impossible to really know what's going on. And I think you can attribute that to the fog of war. CK, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's funny because we're in 2025. Every single person has a camera and a video on their cell phone. Everything is videotaped. And yet, you would think you had more we have more information than we've ever had in our lifetime.
Yep.
Yet, you have we're less knowledgeable on what's actually going on because, man, everyone's spinning. There's been so many fake videos, especially with AI. There's so many AI videos, so many AI reports, and then just Iran's claiming they did, this, and that. Israel's claiming they took out this, and that. And then you have the bot farms, too, that are saying, oh, look at this. Like, it's like 9 out of 10 videos on both sides are fake. So to find out who's winning, who's losing, what's happened that's significant, I can't really. I've looked, I've been digging, and it's impossible to really know.
So the only thing we know for certain is that Israel launched preemptive strikes, and Iran has responded. The level of damage is 100% up for debate. BG, do you think that Israel was justified in their preemptive strike?
MR, that's a really tough question to try to answer. I think the most recent news from the IEAI, or however you say it, the International Atomic Agency, said that they would have sufficient capability for up to like 6 to 9 nuclear armed things, whatever those might be. But that's something that we've kind of known in the U.S. intelligence community is going to be occurring at some point in the future, right? Because whether you believe it or not, they're saying that they're going to create enrichment for the use of nuclear civilian capabilities, right? And not for armament, but you don't know, right? And Iran, I would say, is not a rational actor given everything that they've funded, whether it's the Houthis or Hezbollah or Hamas. So I think from the Israeli perspective, they just said enough's enough, and it's our time to shine. In the context of specifically what you were talking about earlier, though, I don't know if they actually have taken out all these scientists as they claim. But I think it's interesting that the Iranian government is actually coming out and confirming some of the deaths now. So I guess we'll see.
Yeah, they could be using that for motivation.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm curious to see what that looks like. I'm also kind of wondering why Iran waited in their barrage cycles, right? So as I understand it, different news sources say different things right now, but I've seen as few as 5 missile barrages, but I'm seeing as high as like 7 now, or 7 or 8. missile barrages. And what I don't understand is Iran definitely has the capability to launch hundreds and hundreds of missiles at one given, increment. And for whatever reason, they're holding off. So, yeah, it remains to be
Yeah, that's
seen.
super interesting. CK, didn't we talk earlier about about Iran always on the brink of having nuclear weapons? So why now?
I think BG's running for office because he's standing on the fence on this one. Are they justified or not? I don't know. I'll jump in. I'm not running for anything. Totally not justified. This is the MO. How many pointless wars have we got in because we're 3 to 5 on the brink of nuclear, capability? I have here, I'm looking at a snippet of all of the different headlines that says Iran is 3 to 5 years away from nuclear capability. 1992, 3 to 5 years away. 1995, 3 to 5 years away. 2003, their nuclear program is a global threat. And 5, and I'm skipping some because there's too many. Nuclear ambitions must be stopped. 2009, 1 to 2 years away. 12, that is months away. We'll complete enrichment by spring, summer 2013. 2022, weeks away. 2023, advancing nuclear. And again, I've only said like maybe a third of them.
So that's the play, right? To paint Iran as the enemy is to say they're always on the brink of nuclear weapons. But let me play a little devil's advocate here.
But the same play that we did with Saddam, right? And the
sure.
Same play we did in every war we've ever wanted to justify to the American people is by just saying, oh, they have nukes, let's invade. What they actually have is oil. And,
well,
and what they actually are is the enemy of Israel. So that's all the justification, we'll build the rest.
I think the justification isn't oil. I think the justification is that they're funding terrorist organizations and they don't align with the United States and Western allies in ideology, or they side more with Russia, right?
Then why don't we say that, MR? Because we say nukes. Why? Because
it's a trigger word. It's a buzzword.
Yeah, because voters won't vote for. They don't align with us. You know who also doesn't align with us? Half the world, all of South America.
That's why we're not super close with them. That's why
we're not going to war with them. We're not invading them. We're not bombing them.
But they don't really have militaries. They're not really a threat. They're not funding terrorists on a large scale. Like there's a lot of reasons why we're not bombing South America. But
what has Iran done to us lately?
Well, I mean, did they not back the Taliban? Did they not back Al Qaeda? Are they not backing ISIS?
And what has the Taliban done to the United States lately, or Al Qaeda?
I mean, they kicked us out of Afghanistan.
We were just at war with them for 20 years.
They kicked us out of Afghanistan.
All right, MR. So you told me what we did to them, but what have we done? What have they done to us? Yeah, we went into their homeland and killed their
9/11.
Family and killed their goats.
Literally
killed.
Literally 9/11. And then we went to war. They killed a bunch of Americans. They also
what
do
happened
suicide.
before 9/11?
They also do. Well, they tried to blow up the Twin Towers before, anyways. They tried to hijack planes before that, anyways.
And which group did we, fund and arm to take on Russia? I mean,
yeah, but the Mujahideen, that was different.
We did this.
I think you're making some leaps here.
No. This is the hill I die on.
That's a bad hill to die on.
We go into Iraq.
Okay, Bunker's Hill.
Wait, but we go into Iraq and Afghanistan. We start, dropping Predator drones on these apartments, even like as recently as the signal leaks. We watched him go. We watch this guy go into his apartment with his girlfriend. We leveled the apartment. He's dead. Okay, so just who is also killed? This girlfriend, and how many other residents of this apartment, and how many daughters and sons and women. And so now how many uncles and fathers and brothers got radicalized by the United States Predator drones?
Okay, if you're trying to play the card that there's good guys and bad guys, I don't think that's the card to play. There's only countries that have the best interest of themselves. That's it.
And
every country acts in its own best interest.
I'm saying this isn't in our best interest. McChrystal.
But sure, maybe not the United States, but Israel's the one doing it. The United States has been very clear.
I don't think it's in their interest either. What did McChrystal call this?
Why are they doing it? If Israel doesn't think it's in their best interest, why are they doing it?
Yeah, no.
Because it's in. Wait. Let me finish my thought. Because McChrystal called this, I think, terrorist math. You kill one, you radicalize 4, and it doesn't work. You know whose interest it is? And actually, it's in Bibi Netanyahu's and the powers. It's not in the people. It's not in the hardworking blue-collar people of Israel. It's in
well, he's in control of Israel, so therefore,
So it's not
it's
in
Israel.
the country's best interest. It's in the person in charge's best interest, and that's what we call.
Okay, if you want to get that specific.
like that, but I think that's the difference, right? This isn't a democratic thing that they're doing. This is an oligarchical, authoritarian thing that we're doing. The king needs to stay in power, so the king needs to get rid of all threats to his power.
Okay, so from the Iranian perspective, can't we say that the IRGC is definitely anti everything we stand for? I mean, women can't walk outside anymore. Women can barely drive, right? If we look at all the civil rights violations, let's not forget that this entire thing is predicated on what happened on October 7th, 2023, right? It all started with Israel being invaded for the first time since 1948. And they're tired. Frankly, they're tired of it. I get it, right? Like that's why okay, yes, to your point, I don't necessarily agree with the actions that they've taken currently, but I do think something can be said for the way that they're explicitly picking targets and the work that Mossad has done.
Yeah, I mean, I won't even touch, like, without disregarding the CK's conspiracy corner of, Israel has the Mossad has the best intelligence in the world. There's leaks that they had like underground drones in Iran that they activated for this strike, and things like that happening. But they missed the October 7th attacks. And they just didn't see that and overlooked it. That was planned for a year. Israel never caught it, and it just happened. So, that's the conspiracy that I won't touch, but I will throw out there. But to your point, you said it all started then. Did it all start then, or did it all start, with all of the Gazans starving and not getting aid and all of these other things happening?
Well, no, I would say it started when the UN decided that Israel was going to be a country, and then every Arab nation tried to invade them and destroy them off the face of the earth. And they said, no, we just dealt with that with Hitler, so we're not doing that again.
Okay, but why did...
And then they won the war because they get to, when you win the war, you get to write the rules, right? You get to write the books. So that's what happened.
Okay, so is that what we're saying? So there's nothing wrong as long as you're powerful.
No, whoa. I don't think we're arguing not just right and wrong.
That's just
I think
happened.
we're just, I think my whole point is countries act in their own best self-interest. If you want to say that it's not,
and I'm saying
Israel's
this is not in their best interest.
Okay,
yeah.
If you want to say it's not, well, they think it is. So your opinion is that it's not. Their opinion is, or at least its leaders are. It's
leaders. Yeah, leaders are.
Sure. And guess what? The leaders are the ones making the decisions. So instead of specifically naming all the leaders in Israel, we're going to use Israel generically because they're the ones making the decisions.
Bibi Netanyahu.
Sure.
And I'll go further to say that
of course
American leaders say that it is because we're getting funded because all of the American leaders are getting funded by AIPAC. But not because it's like, is it in America's interest for Israel to do this to Iran? I don't think it's in our interest at all.
Okay, you could
except for the fact that the politicians are getting funded by the the pro-Israel PAC.
Sure. If you were to look at it, I was trying to pull it up. There's a quote. There's some famous quote. They're saying that there's only really 3 reasons to go to war. One of them is resources, and I honestly can't remember the other 2. But if you look at it, a lot of the wars that are currently happening and have happened recently are almost completely avoidable. There's no real reason why Russia had to invade Ukraine when it did. It wasn't like Russia was about to fall apart at the seams, and it wasn't like their economy was going to crash, and it wasn't like they're short on resources and needed water, food in order to sustain, or its population was going to die. Right? This is where the whole people aspect comes in, where they get into the self-defense and they're trying to think 10 moves ahead, just like World War I, when the British were afraid that the German Navy was going to become too powerful, and they're going to get too powerful and you couldn't stop them. It's all fear. I don't want to say all. A lot of it is driven by fear and thinking that once they're powerful enough, they're going to hurt us when we had an opportunity to hurt them and we chose not to. I mean, that's the United States after World War II, right? And in the Cold War after the Soviet Union fell, we could have done anything to any country, and there would have been no one could have stopped us, and we chose not to, right? If other countries had that power, I'm not confident that they would have had the restraint that the United States has had and still has. Now, you can argue that we meddle too much, and that's right.
Restraint? Come on.
If you want to argue that we still meddle, absolutely. But I still think we could go into any country.
Women and children with predator drones is meddling. I mean, I hate to say, what is a war crime?
Yeah,
Well,
but
I
the
don't think
Russians
any
are
wars
doing the
ever
same
fought
thing.
without a war going.
And the Russians
Sure.
do the same thing. So do the
The
Chinese.
Russians are doing the same thing, and the Chinese are doing the same thing. As long as we're on the same, understanding that we are no better than the Russians and the Chinese in our quote unquote, most free and
Hey, dude, don't hate on
morally-
America, brother. This is God's country. Come on.
Yeah. As long as we're in agreement that we're on the same, same page as Russia and Chinese, and no better than them.
I don't know if I'll go that far. We don't have re-education centers and just absolutely obliterating the weaker Muslims.
No, we just have social media that's, a re-education center.
I mean, don't get us started on social media. All right, I think we just went on a 10-minute rabbit hole completely off
You got me
the
pumped
topic.
up, MR.
I mean, I guess I did. I don't know if that really ties back to what's going to happen next with Israel and Iran. All right, so let's reset the ground rules because we just deep dived CK's underlying thinking that America's the bad guys here. All right, when you look at Israel and Iran, the only things that we know for certain is that Israel attacked Iran first, Iran's retaliating, and now they're going back and forth. To the extent of damage is unknown. We can make assumptions that nuclear facilities or uranium-rich, whatever nuclear components they had were targeted. And BG, to your point is, and CK, it's like, even though Iran doesn't have nukes right now, and maybe the papers and the media has been pushing for 20 years, we can all make a general assumption that there was some level of nukes that they were going after because they wouldn't sign these nuclear pacts with the United States. And even Donald Trump went on and said, hey, sign this or bad things are going to happen. So we can say that they have some level of nuclear capabilities or getting to a certain point. What that is up for debate. What we know now is that they're continuing to fire missiles at each other. What do you think is going to happen next? Because I do not think a ground invasion is on the table for a million different reasons that we don't even need to deep dive. So what's the end game? They just bomb each other back and forth for like a few weeks, a few months. It's not like they can invade like Russia into Ukraine. There's definitely limited warfare, which means an end is more likely than a long war like Russia-Ukraine.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. It almost seems like they want each other to not exist, but there has to be restraint on both sides, right? Because if Iran actually did like flatten Tel Aviv or nuke Israel, then it would almost force the United States to get involved. And I don't think they want that. I think when you're talking about someone like Bibi Netanyahu and whoever the hell the president or king or whatever of Iran is.
The Ayatollah?
Yeah, whatever his name is, I think both of them care about self-interest more than anything else, which means not dying.
Sure, and this is where I'm talking about restraint.
Yeah.
Israel has nukes, does it not? They can nuke Tehran. What's the capital?
Tehran.
Thank you. Thank
Tehran.
you. And it could not exist if they launched it right now. Just like Russia could do the same to Ukraine. So more powerful countries with more powerful weapons are showing restraint. I'm not saying they're abolished of all the sin. Yeah. I'm just saying that to some degree they're showing the highest level of restraint.
Yeah, and Israel has to show restraint. I think for the last 3 decades, they've realized they can't just go on the attack because they need to win the court of public opinion as well as winning like the war,
which they couldn't be worse at.
I don't know about that.
Well, recently, I've never seen more Palestinian flags in my entire life. It's like I'm very confident all these people are not from Palestine because of how small their population is, but yet everybody is a supporter. Very rarely will you see an Israeli flag being flown.
And yet, they have the majority of congressmen, and they have the president, and they have the majority
we're not talking about power and money. We're talking about the court of public appeal, which is what you brought up. And I would argue that they have the court of public appeal. At least socially. At least people willing to post on social media for what it's worth.
I think they need to at least have the American lawmaker, like at a very minimum, they need the American lawmakers to be in their corner. And they definitely have that. You're right, they're losing Columbia University and the majority, I think, of people they're losing. So that's the restraint, because if the American funding stops, right, if it becomes so unpopular, if this becomes a 90-10 issue that we can't support Israel because they're tyrannical, and they lose American support, they cease to exist, right? They need us. Which is why they've built their whole structure on funding our politicians.
So where do you think this thing ends between Israel and Iran?
I think we talked about this, MR. It's like Iran has so much land, so this is like the crux of the problem with Israel is like, yeah, they can do way more damage, but in terms of like hotspots, Iran only needs to hit a couple of hotspots, and they do a lot more damage than Israel can ever do. So where does it end? I think it ends with Iran's regime out of power, but that's scary, right? Because if you feel like you're about to go out of power, you
take a couple bigger swings.
You hit the big red button, right?
What do you think, BG?
I think to CK's point, that's exactly. I think for Israel, and Omar, you and I talked about this, I think earlier in the week, or right as this conflict kind of kicked off. I think this was always going to come to a head because, I mean, even in Syria, Israeli forces had attacked Iranian forces from the IRGC back in like 2018. I think this was always going to come to a head. I think, to CK's point, exactly that. I think the Israelis will continue to back the Mujahideen of Iran, which are the more democratic people, as opposed to the Ayatollah, which is more connected to the laws of, whichever Muslim sect you believe in, if you're Shia or Sunni, right? So in this case, I think overthrowing the government is their end state. They want to see Iran in the position that it was pre-1979 when they were a democratic state before the Islamic Revolution.
But here's another, wrench in all of this. We always talk about Gaza and Hamas being a proxy for Iran. Well, Iran's kind of a proxy for China. China is actively, sending things to Iran. I think, it's hard to know what's true and what's not true in the news. But China, I think, is funding them, propping them up to keep them stable so that they don't lose power. So that, because they can fight wars through them. And they can also keep us distracted through them. China has its own ambitions, and if we're focused, it's like the Eye of Sauron, right? When the Eye of Sauron's looking at this big war, they're not watching Frodo sneaking up Mount Doom.
Yeah,
and
I like that
China's
analogy.
doing in the Pacific.
No, I think that's a great analogy. I don't think what you guys said is going to happen. I don't even think it's that likely. I think Israel pretty much has already achieved its goal. It took out a big chunk of leadership. It's going to have bragging rights for the next how many years. But the key is that they took out what they believe to be critical nuclear sites, and they just pushed back their nuclear program decades, which is what their end state is because they can deal with Iran, they can deal with all this shit, but what they can't deal, what is unthinkable to them is them having nukes, because now it's unpredictable, and now you have a nuclear adversary. So only time will tell.
To your point, I think, and I'll go back to my crazy conspiracies, but Bibi likes to have a boogeyman, right? And if you take out Iran completely, there's no boogeyman.
Isn't there a saying like, "I'll keep the enemy I know"? What's that saying?
You rather have the enemy you know than the enemy you don't, I think.
Yeah, it might be something like that. So yeah, as long as they don't have nukes, you feel like you're in a position of power.
Keep them at arm's length, but also keep them there, because you win elections with the enemy still there.
Yep, exactly. All right, let's pivot over to No King's Day and Trump's parade. So quick summary here is that No King's Day is in protest of Trump and overall ICE, basically saying that Trump is acting as a king. He's doing whatever he wants, that Congress, the Senate, the judges aren't standing up to Trump. And I guess he's acting more as a dictator, an all-powerful leader. And then simultaneously, hence why they picked No King's Day, Trump wanted a military parade. I guess he went over, someone can fact check me on this country, but I think he went to like France and they were doing a parade. He went to some other country, saw a military parade. He was like, this is so cool. I want to do it. He did it. Honestly, from the pictures and the videos, it seems like it was really cool. You have vintage World War II. It's like a proud display of our history. I don't see a problem with it. It seems like overall a great time and to show off, hey, the tradition and history of what America has done, where it did fight a lot of really, really just wars. And so before I turn it over to you guys, I do want to say is I am a huge supporter of peaceful protests. And from everything I've seen so far, all these protests that happen across the country are peaceful. So I personally do not have a problem with it. Okay, BG's giving me the face like he saw stuff. Okay, on my feed from the research I've done, I haven't seen anything yet. That doesn't mean nothing has happened today. So don't crucify me. Yeah. No, I'm not talking LA. I'm talking specifically today.
Yeah, that's not No Kings. That's ICE, right?
Right.
But
right.
I will say today, minus the assassinations in Minnesota, which
I think that's different, though. That's topic 3. You think they're correlated?
I mean, he had No Kings pamphlets in his car. That's a fact.
Did he?
Yeah, a bunch of pamphlets that said No Kings.
Yeah, I've seen multiple reports that he had the No Kings pamphlets in his car.
Okay, all right. I guess we'll get into the third topic too. And then there is the Minnesota senator, right? No, congresswoman. At the state level, though, right? Not the federal level. Yeah, that were assassinated. Her and her husband, and then there's another set of state legislators.
Melissa Hortman and John Hoffman.
Okay, yeah, and then there's another set of state legislators that were in the hospital critical condition. Okay, so we just hit all our topics. Okay, CK, what are your thoughts with the protest? What are your thoughts with the parade and the assassination?
Let's see. Parade is spending $40 million, I think, maybe more. I'm against.
Can you put a price on freedom? Can you put a price on America?
Yeah, the price of freedom is $0. It's called. Leave me alone. Don't take my money. That's the definition of freedom. If I have to pay money for a parade, and you're forcing me to do it, that's called slavery.
Jeez, dude, you were on another one today.
Yeah, the whiskey's hitting deep. No, so that part doesn't like it, right? The libertarian in me says it's wasteful spending. If people wanted a parade, the free market and capitalism would, someone would charge us for a parade. The other part of me says that if Biden threw a parade or Obama threw a parade, no one would bat an eye. In fact, it'd probably be one of the
inverse.
If Obama threw a military parade on the 250-year anniversary of the Army, the pictures would be like top pictures of the century, something like that. Times would have it on their cover.
I think there's a lot of truth there.
So that part is annoying, but also I'm against it for other reasons because I just don't like spending taxpayer money on non-taxpayer things.
All right, BG.
So, first side of the coin, I agree with you, MR. I think everything that I've seen from the pictures and videos and stuff, it does actually look kind of cool. To CK's point, completely agree. Think it's a huge waste of money. I think it makes us look more like a authoritarian type of government because only countries that actually suck at conducting warfare operations have parades, generally speaking, like North Korea, Russia, China. And in some cases,
I don't know if I agree with that.
Okay,
no, France did one.
France did one, and France is terrible at winning. So yeah, I would agree. In general,
fair, Germany would do one, but Germany is trying to push away from the Nazi stuff. So I think they've only been a country unified for 20 years. So I think they're being.
And the UK doesn't really do parades unless they're celebrating the king and queen. So that's my point being. It seems like we're celebrating a king here, even though it's under the guise of the army's birthday for a parade, right? So I just, to CK's point, yeah, I agree. I think it's a waste of money, and I don't agree that we did this at all. I think it's crazy that this is happening in our nation's capital. So those are my thoughts.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. See, I honestly don't have an issue with the parade, and the reason is that pictures last a lifetime, and you're going to forget about all the spending, right? So I'll use a sports analogy real quick. Reggie Miller did the famous choke thing against the Knicks. Do you guys remember that?
For sure. Spike Lee?
Yeah, it was Spike Lee, right? The Pacers lost that series, but no one remembers that they lost the series. They only remember the picture. My point being is that these pictures, once they get out of the Trump's eye in 10, 15, 20 years, they're going to show these pictures and be like, hey, we did this. This was amazing. It'll serve just culturally more important than what's currently happening. So I think there's that aspect as well.
Yeah, to your point, how much money does a Super Bowl ad cost?
Sure, it's $8 million for 30 seconds.
Is it really only $8 million? I would think it's more now.
I don't know. Fact check us. But go continue. Pretend it's $10 million. Just go with your point.
You're paying money, and you're getting how many? Is there a boost to recruitment and things like that?
Could be. I mean, they're saying recruitment's at an all-time high.
Yeah, and if you look at the Army, you might get that. So maybe it is worth it. In just a purely capitalistic way.
Yeah, and people, raises country morale. You see a lot of people that are inspired by it. They're part of their country. recruiting. There's that whole other side of it too. And then when it comes to the No King's Day protest, right? Obviously, we just talked to LA. That's totally separate because that's rioting. That's not protesting. This is going to sound horrible, but I actually think like the vast majority of protests are like a giant waste of time. Now, I believe in them, and I think they should exist, and you should never punish for peaceful protests. Like, I think that's the most un-American, undemocratic thing. Again, peaceful is the key word, not rioting. But I do think in a large part, they're pointless. Now, you can argue this one's not because so many people did it, and they're really trying to make a statement, and the news is covering it. We're talking it, but I don't know. I don't think this is a popular opinion, but like, I don't know, man. I just like, it's just so much.
I think it's very telling, like, time and time again, how the Democratic like narrative everyone just falls in line to it. You know, you've seen the videos of all the news anchors saying the same thing, like word for word. And then No Kings, I mean, like, if you were to ask me, like, does No Kings tie to this parade? It's just kind of like a random narrative that someone came up with.
To me, it's just really intense propaganda.
Yeah, and everyone falls in line, though. The whole anyone who's liberal, they fell in line with it, and they said No Kings. I mean, I was driving down the highway, and every single underpass, there were just people, No Kings, No Kings, No Kings. So, like,
I mean, I just think it's such a stretch, and it's so annoying because it's back to what we talk about all the time. It's the 90-10, right? It's the 90-10 of things that actually matter, and they never pick the 90. It's very rarely. And you can say, well, didn't Trump a few months ago post a picture with him with a crown on his head and all that? I'm like, oh, I think he did. Yeah, sure. But is Trump a king? Absolutely not.
No, he posted a picture as the Pope.
Yeah, which is so much worse. So much worse.
Yeah.
But it's just like, it's like, guys, you're almost playing into him by doing that. If anything, he'd be a dictator, not a king. And also, you know, he went up and he was joking about it. He's like, if I was a king, I wouldn't have to go to Mike Johnson. I wouldn't have to deal with the judges. Yeah. I wouldn't have to deal with all the Democrats. And it's like, yeah, you're clearly not a king. I just think
it's telling of is just like the whole Democratic side. They're sheep. They just fall in line to the narrative.
Well, I think the Republican side is. I think like almost everybody's a sheep. I think very few people actually question both sides.
But this is a great example of the Democrats being sheep.
Oh yeah, if you want to just point an example, absolutely. If you protested today, you're probably I don't want to get canceled. I think we're doing pretty good. You might be a sheep, and it's okay.
Yeah,
there's more sheep than not. So just be a part of the masses. Well, actually, if you think about it, if the majority are protesting, then just by default you're a sheep, right? Because the sheep is like the majority of people. Whether they're right or wrong is indifferent. It's just the overall herd mentality. Hence, a sheep.
They just released a study that like Republicans have a way more diversity of thought, and like their political opinions are like there's a little like imagery of a map. And, like the Democrats are like this little dot. Everyone's on the same, and then the Republicans,
which is very impressive.
Very more expansive of like diversity of thought and opinions. And I think like the Israel-Iran thing is a pretty telling example. It was like there's a lot that say what I say is like Israel caused this, United States caused this, and we're at fault. And there's a lot of people who are like, no, we must support Israel as the only ally in that region.
Yeah, honestly, I hate both parties almost equally. I think both are so corrupt, and I don't know. But I can't say that because both sides listen to this podcast. I like everyone that listens to this podcast. Is that a safe thing to say?
Don't be a sheep. Don't say the safe thing, MR.
Yeah, leave the safety.
Can I say something?
We only need 5 views. We don't need the 400. We only need 5.
Can I be the opposite pill for a moment? Let's not forget, even with all of these quote unquote millions of people, I'm using air quotes here, millions of people protesting, let's not forget that Trump won the popular vote in November in every single swing state. Full stop.
Yeah, that's true.
So let's remember that the Democratic Party still has no idea what they're doing, right?
And
yeah, they're going to rely on Gavin Newsom.
He probably won California too. Don't ban me, YouTube.
All right. Well, this was a special episode we did because of everything happening in Israel and Iran. CK and BG are in the corner that Iran's government could potentially be overthrown because of this. I'm in the corner of saying that Iran's nuclear capabilities will be diminished for decades to come. I guess we'll find out where we'll land in a few weeks. I do want to say, though, we've been right about almost everything. Now, this episode's a cop-out because we disagree on the end state, so one of us is going to be right. But for the most part, when we agree on things, we usually get it right, which is pretty cool. So, BGCK, I want to give you guys each closing thoughts, whether it's CK going off the rails and being a conspiracy theorist or just just doing him, but whatever it may be. CK, give me your closing thoughts.
I just want to give a shout out to Saddam H, my favorite commenter.
Jeez.
I wrongly accused you of not donating last time. You signed up, didn't donate. You did. You know, a lot of people have started a lot of wars for wrongly accusing Saddam H, and I guess I'm part of that now. But
do not be a sympathizer. What is wrong with you? No, Saddam was a horrific human being.
I'm not talking about
horrible.
I'm
like,
not
what
talking
are
about
you
Saddam
doing?
Hussein anymore. I'm talking about Saddam H, the commenter who also donated to your Patreon. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay. Wow.
He
Let's
was
be
good for
very clear.
donating.
Saddam is a horrific human being.
Saddam Hussein,
Horrific.
the leader of Iraq, was awful. Saddam H, the ghost account, the burner account who comments on every single podcast we make, great guy.
Okay. Jeez. Wow. Wow. Someone's gonna watch us one day, and we're gonna get canceled at whatever.
I told you I'm
not
not running for office.
I mean, no. Okay, let's pause real quick. Does anyone actually want to run for office? One, seems miserable. Half the country's gonna hate you. Two, you are bought out, so you have no free will. It just seems like the biggest ego play in the world, where you're just trying to acquire power. I feel like you cannot be a good human being.
You cannot be, but you could get that Raytheon stock going.
I just feel like you're not a good person if you're in politics. Or you may go in as a good person, but you're going to end up corrupt because it's impossible. The machine is too big. All right, cool. I got a bunch of head nods. All right, BG, what are your closing thoughts? Please be better than CK. He is just off the rails today.
The rails today, CK. I think, for the record, I think that my thinking is more in line with yours, MR, with respect to what's going to happen Israel-Iran. I was just saying I think the Israelis end state is actually trying to get the Mujahideen to overthrow the government, specifically Khomeini and the IRGC. Anyway, for the other stuff, I guess we'll see what happens in terms of the next popular thing that people want to be anti. ICE may have overstepped their bounds in certain cases, and maybe they're losing their minds too, but we'll see. I want to know more about this assassination stuff that happened in Minnesota. So curious to see how that stuff goes, and then as we get more news into the future for economic policy and tariff stuff, because China's trade deal, I guess, is closed. So be curious to see how that actually pans out here in the next coming months.
Yeah, that's a great call out. Well, I just want to say thank you to everyone that listened. Thank you for those that have joined our Patreon. We really, really appreciate it. Hopefully you still like this episode if you're listening. And if you haven't joined, please join. Every dollar counts. Again, we're just trying to get enough just to pay for the software and the equipment to do this episode. We have a lot of fun. Apparently, some of us have more fun than others, CK. But anyways, thank you so much for listening. Thank you to the 150. Even though we got more than 150 last episode, we still know the 150 is the backbone of this channel. And you know what, CK, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a new a tier on Parrot. Oh my gosh, I hate you guys. Create a new tier.
I'm giving them the choke, the Reggie Miller choke.
Yeah, he's giving that to me. I'm going to create a new level on Patreon, and it's going to be t-shirts and hats for the 150. So be on the lookout for that. Join. It'll be a lot of fun. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day.